Imagine you just get done a hard week of your 40-hour job. You get done and you receive no paycheck. You knew going in you weren't going to get a paycheck, but you worked your hardest and you did what you had to do during the week and still received no compensation. This is the life of a student athlete. Can you imagine not getting compensated for a 40-hour work week at any other normal job? You can't, because it doesn't happen. Student athletes are a breed of people that don't get paid for the work that they put in and out throughout the season that they go to and the off season. I'm credible to talk about this because I've watched videos, I have done research, I've read news articles, and I've witnessed it in the news, in the mainstream media, about what's happening to these student athletes. I believe that student athletes should be paid because they're the ones who bring in all the money, they bring in all the fans. Without them, there wouldn't be any sporting events, and they work the same amount of hours a normal human would for a work week, sometimes even more, depending on where you go. And the scholarship that they do receive, a full-ride academic scholarship, is not near enough for what they need to live and eat and be healthy. Student athletes bring in all the money. The NCAA annually makes $11 billion a year, and I got this from Emily Gillespie, The Ethical and Financial Implications of Paying College Athletes. They make $11 billion a year, and they sell jerseys, they sell food at the games, they sell merchandise, and the players get none of it, even though they're the main people that are bringing in all of the money. Without the student athletes playing the games, the NCAA would not be able to make large amounts of money off of the games and merchandise. More than the estimated, the NCAA makes more than the estimated total revenues of both the NBA and the NHL, National Hockey League. So they make a lot of money, and the people in the NBA are getting paid, and the people in the NHL are getting paid. So why wouldn't the student athletes be getting paid when their corporation makes more than both of those leagues? This year, the University of Alabama reported $143 million in athletic revenues, more than 30 NHL teams and 25 of the 30 NBA teams. And I got that from Raymond Schindler, College Athletes, Recipients of the Payment of the Intercollegiate Student Athletes. So Alabama made almost $150 million just off of athletics, and none of the athletes saw any of it. So not only are they putting their bodies on the line, but they must treat it like a day job. On the average college athlete spends 43.3 hours a week on their sport. That is 3.3 hours more than the average work week for an American citizen. And still no money is given to them. The NCAA claims that these athletes are considered amateurs and that they're just students, but the NCAA makes them not able to fully be at school all the time. Like for the NCAA March Madness tournament, they're gone for sometimes weeks, and they have to do all of their schoolwork on the bus. And at that point, you have close to like midterms, and you're wrapping up the school year. So it's really hard for people to be able to really get all their schoolwork done if they're on the road and having to play basketball games in front of a bunch of people without any compensation. And like in 2014, the college football championship was on a Monday night, which forced the Florida State football team to miss the first day of spring semesters. So they weren't able to get that information from their teachers, the syllabus, stuff like that. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know how they were supposed to handle the day. They didn't know where, like stuff like that. Like the first day of classes is always one of the most stressful, and they had to miss it because of a really big football game. But the NCAA still considers them just students. So back in 1905, the NCAA only opposed paying the players because the coaches also weren't getting paid, and now the coaches get paid sometimes more than they should. Like the coaches get paid like there are some in like 40 states. The highest paid government job is college's head sports coach, and I found this from 64 Reasons College Athletes Need to be Paid by Dr. Staff. And Last year, the average salary for a BCS eligible football coach was 2.5 million. Um, so they're getting paid millions of dollars to coach these kids, and they wouldn't have a job if these kids weren't to compete for them. So, and then our own UNI head basketball coach Ben Jacobson makes almost $900,000 a year. So if he's getting paid that much, and we're a small school in Iowa, imagine how much a lot of the other coaches are getting paid. With all this time and put into the practices and games, the basic full ride scholarship is sometimes not enough to live in a lot of areas. The basis of full ride scholarship is not nearly enough as a student who needs to be able to get from place to place and afford the basic needs of humans. The NCAA enforces rules that prevent paying players what they would make in a competitive labor market. So, like, to pay rent and stuff like that. Some colleges are able to go on stipends, money to pay for the kids' rent and sometimes food, but that's not always the case. So, the big time football programs like Alabama and all them that go and make national runs every year, they can afford sometimes to pay stipends and do this, but that's not the case for every college. So some kids just aren't able to gain enough money to afford themselves, so they have to just live as if they were unable to afford it in the first place. A superstar quarterback or starting basketball player sometimes generates literally millions in revenue for the university, but receives only a tiny portion of that in a scholarship. And this year, the number one prospect in the 2019 class, James Wiseman, received help from Penny Hardaway. After that, Penny Hardaway became the coach of the University of Memphis, and Wiseman was suspended for taking the money. This is an example of how the NCAA tries to take away help that these kids are getting because they're so money hungry. And he was suspended for 11 games and was forced to pay $11,000 to any charity. And knowing well that if he could have afforded $11,000, he wouldn't have taken the money in the first place. So, in conclusion, I think the NCAA is a corrupt system. They are all money hungry, and they just don't care about the basic needs of the athletes themselves, and they need to pay the athletes because they are the reason that all the money is coming in.